advantage over you based on who they have. Like if they, for example, pull in the incumbent contractor, they're going to have a significant advantage over you, right? Because the incumbent will have a lot of knowledge about the customer. What kind of capabilities will they bid? Because just like you have a whole solution set, they have a whole solution set that they can choose from. How are they going to price their offerings? You know, you can get some of that information through the FOIA process, Freedom of Information Act. You can also get some of it on USA Spending. How do they position themselves? Are they the lowest cost provider? Are they the highest quality provider? Understand how they're going to position themselves. And then how do they view your company's capabilities? Because they're going to try to ghost you in their proposal, right? So you need to be thinking, how do you come across in the marketplace? And what are they going to be saying about you? As you get better and better at government contracts, or as you start using your commercial references to win government business, think about which contracts that you have represent a broad scope of your capabilities. Because what you want to show to your customer is that you have an ability to provide a lot of different capabilities, so you want to be able to show contracts that represent them. You also want to pick contracts that represent the current statement of work that you're going after. Because again, think about the bullseye, right? If you can show exactly that you've done this work with that customer before, that's the best. Then you look at, have you done it for other federal contractor, federal government customers? And then you look at the bigger picture with other companies and together. If you work with the same company that you're going to be bidding on with this current customer, so in other words, you've partnered with company XYZ before, showcase that, because it shows that you have a good working relationship. You were willing to work with them again, they were willing to work with you again. You want to pick recent contracts. So if you show a contract from 10 years ago, they're not going to give much credence to that. If you show one that you're currently working on, they're going to say, well, gee, you've got a good situation going there. And then if your contracting officers or your customers will give you high references, will they say that you've done a good job for them. Those are the ones you want to pick. So now we've gotten to the point where we prepare for the final proposal effort. So you get the final RFP document. It's been posted on FedBizOps. It says it's due on such and such a date. The first thing that you need to think about is they normally state within 10 days you have to submit questions. So in terms of the first level of effort, rallying point, get everybody reading the entire RFP and coming up with what their questions are. Because after that 10-day window, you can ask the question, but the government doesn't have to answer it. So if you need answers to these questions, really put the upfront effort in to read it and ask questions. Then you make that preliminary bid decision. Are you going to go after it or are you not going to go after it? This is where the rubber meets the road. And when I say preliminary, basically what I'm saying is that you're committing to going after this proposal unless something comes up that significantly alters things. So for example, you're gonna, you're writing the proposal, everything's all good, and the company that's doing the bulk of the work decides they don't want to bid on it anymore. That would be a reason why you would pull the bid decision at that point. But when you make it here, you're committing resources, so you want to make that in good faith. You round out your core team with other key areas of expertise. You develop your proposal plan. So how many people are skilled in project management? This is a really critical skill set. I'm not saying that you have to go get your PMP certification, but if you have the opportunity to take a project management class, I highly recommend it. I teach project management classes, and what I find is that people who don't have project management skills are at a distinct disadvantage to those that do. Because what it gives you is a set of tools to effectively manage your cost, your resources, your scope, and how long it takes. And if you don't have that critical skill set, your projects they can get out of control cost-wise, they can get out of control schedule-wise. You your customer runs rampant over you with this statement of work, it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you don't have the resources to support it. Just for your own edification, even if it's just ordering Kersner's project management book off Amazon. Get a, there's probably 7 editions out there. Get a cheap one that's $3 or $4, whatever. Just get project management as a skill set under your belt. No matter what you do, it's really worthwhile. And then select your volume leaders, as I mentioned before. Okay, so here's where you're actually making your bid decision. And the first thing you do is, for your bid decision, is you want to make sure that you've read all components of the government RFP. Because as I've mentioned, requirements are tucked in all over the place. So you want to make sure you read the whole thing. You want to determine for yourself, do you have the resources to do the work? So here's one of the things that I giggle about internally. Companies hire me to help them get into government business. And they want to get into big data. And I say, okay, great. So we sit down, we come up with all the strategy and all this other kind of stuff, and now it's time to write the proposal for big data. And they say to me, do you have any idea who we can hire to write the proposal for big data? If you don't have enough people in your organization to write the proposal, chances are you don't have enough people in big data to run the contract. That's a big disconnect. And if you are asking for an extension, why would you think the government would want to hire you if you can't even get the proposal in on time? So just think about what messages you're sending to the government when you take certain actions, right? If you're asking for an extension, then they already know you can't handle just writing about your solution, much less delivering your solution. I'm not saying that there aren't times when it's strategically in your best interest to do so, but just think about what messages you're sending. Just like when you write your management volume. I'm sure you write about yourselves in a glowing manner. We will be able to hit the ground running because we have been doing this for so long. We've got all this processes in place. We know our stuff. And then the contract gets awarded, and you say to the government, and the government says, okay, we're going to start work next Tuesday. And you say, oh, wait a minute, I don't have any people hired. Why don't you have the people hired? You told us in your proposal, which was part of our selection criteria of why we picked you, that you were ready to go. And now the first deliverable comes along and you don't have people to do it? That just doesn't fly. And they can terminate you for default day 2 of the contract. So you can go through all this effort and they can, so let me just tell you a story. I ran a contract with the Veterans Affairs Administration, the Acquisition Academy up in Frederick, Maryland. And we won the contract, and I had a great team working for me, and we had all these deliverables, all these documents we had to give to the government within the first 3 months. And so my team's putting together these documents feverishly. We're going through all the quality control checks. We're getting them shipped off to the government. Most of the time, they're getting them like 3 days early. So I'm feeling pretty good about things. Until I get a phone call from the program manager who says, Mary Ann, if you don't start delivering deliverables on time, we're going to have to terminate this contract. Oh my God. Oh my God. I said, Richard, what are you talking about? You've gotten all the deliverables at least 3 days early. What? And he said, no, your proposals, your schedule said deliverable complete on, say, Tuesday the 10th. And I said, yeah, and you've been receiving that deliverable like on the 7th. And he said, no, it says deliverable complete. That means that you've turned it over to me, I've made my comments, and you have 3 days to fix my comments, and then you turn it back, and then I have 3 days to accept it, and then you submit a properly filled out invoice, and we have 30 days to pay that invoice, and then once you receive the payment, deliverable complete. How was I interpreting deliverable complete? Out of my backyard and yours, right? So my point is, that is very specific language that you have to ensure that you and your customer are in sync, because you can run into that same problem. And who would have thought that? Like even when I'm telling all of you, you're all like shaking your heads. But yet that's how he was interpreting it. And guess who's right? Guess who's right? So we always want to make sure that we're very clear with that.
So the solution for that, since you can't talk to the contracting officer, so you said the PM contacted you?
I can talk to the contracting officer once the contract's awarded, but
Okay.
in this case, the PM called me,
Okay.
because I was the PM for the contract.
Okay.
Other things that you look at, market conditions, how's the rest of your business going? You may decide to pursue federal business because commercial's not doing too hot, or you may decide, hey, it's a lot easier to win commercial business, I'll just stick over here and not do certain government opportunities. What's your understanding of the customer, what's your understanding of the competitive landscape, and then what's your win probability? Okay, so I'm not telling you anything new because you've written proposals before, right? And it's very similar to your commercial, except that sometimes your commercial business has deadlines. Sometimes it's just when you get it over to them. In the government case, it's always deadline driven. So when you're doing proposals, you typically have short, unpredictable time frames, meaning things have to get done really rapidly, and you believe the due date is here, but the due date may shift, but it may not shift. So once you know the due date, you have to stick to it. Firm deadlines. You also have proposal team members typically who haven't worked together before. Now, when we're talking small companies, you probably don't have all worked together before, so that's going to make things easier. So you don't necessarily have that issue. But you will have that issue if you bring in any subcontractors to write their parts, because chances are you haven't worked with them before. When the government issues an RFP and you respond with a proposal, the government could accept it as is, and you are in a contractually binding relationship. So get it right the first time. I'm going to say that again. When they issue the RFP and you respond with a proposal, they could accept it as is. Sometimes they will actually ask you to sign off on the contract document. And all they have to do is sign their side, and it is a done deal. So always make sure you get it right the first time. More often than not, they'll go through those after submission activities, but don't count on them. Get it right the first time. Your proposal team could be centralized or decentralized. Are all of you working with centralized proposal teams? Everybody's in the same location? So everybody from your company is in the same location, but you're still working with subcontractors that are going to be remotely located. So sort of figure out how that's going to work. All team members on a proposal effort are not needed the whole time. So, typically you set up a separate cost center for a proposal effort so that you can see how much it costs you to win this particular piece of business. And, I might need you for 2 days, and then you go off, and I don't need you anymore. So you always want to manage your cost centers so that you're not continuing to charge to this proposal effort, even though I only asked for 2 days of work. You need to control your expenses, because if you overspend your budget, it goes right into your profit. It eats away from your profit. So pay attention to the costs associated with running a proposal effort. And you have to get your team members to think outside the box. So okay, so let's say you have a really good systems engineer, okay? And that person can make a network sing. It just is really, really technically competent, knows their stuff as an SE. What do you do with that person? And you say, gee, we have this really important proposal effort for us. We really want to get our best people on it. We want to bring the systems engineer in to work on this proposal effort. And so the first thing you say to this systems engineer is, please solution this for us. Tell us what we need. Now, this systems engineer probably has never done that before. Probably they're really good at, once you buy a system, they are really good at learning how it works and optimizing it. But they've never really had to figure out which is the best solution out there before. So that's one skill they have to have. Then you say to them, we need you to write about the solution. Not a lot of overlap between technical people and good writers, right? That's sort of a disconnect there. Exactly. So you're asking them to do writing, which is out of their comfort zone. And then you say, okay, I need you to talk with our senior leadership and tell them why we should go after this deal. So market our solution to senior leadership so that they pick this proposal to go after. Again, not a strong suit of technical people. Next, your contracts people come over and say, hey, I'm getting a lot of, I have to put together a statement of work for the subcontractors that we need to provide this solution. Help me write the statements of work for all the subcontractors. So now you're getting this technical person to be writing contractual language. Definitely a skill set all technical people have. You may even get them into, okay, we need a graphical representation of how this thing's going to work. So show us like a picture, drawing, good thing. And the list just goes on and on. Oh, pricing. Help us price this deal. How much should this really cost? Help us negotiate the subcontracts or the prime contracts, right? Not that they're the lead on it, but that they have to provide that expertise. So you see, by this example, that we pick somebody who's really good at what they do. We assume that because they're really good at this, they're going to be really good at all these other pieces. False assumption. And we assume that it's not just the systems engineer. If I took the pricing person, I now want the pricing person to understand contracts and the terms and conditions and the different parts of the technical solution to make sure that we're pricing the right items. So anybody that you bring into a proposal effort, because they have an excellent skill set, you're now asking them to broaden out in a whole lot of different directions. And we still have the short, unpredictable time frames. We still have the firm deadlines. And a lot of times these people have never worked with each other. And you're taking people out of their comfort zone. And chances are they're not getting a lot of sleep because they're working full days first and now they're working on the proposal effort at night. And they're cranky because they're not with their family and their friends. And you're feeding them pizza every night, which, let's face it, they're constipated. A lot of issues going on with this group, right? This is why you have to be really careful about the kind of people you pick. And this is really why people sometimes, organizations sometimes will just say, you 5 people, you're our proposal team. You will work on every proposal. And you need to pay them really, really well because this is a hard job. But if they're doing it time in and time out, at least you've got all these kinks worked out of the system. Any questions about
that part right there was recorded though, right? And you do need to pay that person really, really well. Because that seems to be all too common. The perception is 9 times out of 10, I'm seeing that like the reason they want to add multiple different hats to the same person isn't necessarily because they think they're so good at, contractually speaking, but then doing graphics and they could be doing good at the others. It's just they see dollar signs in their pocket by not having to hire out to get another person to do this particular job. So,
yeah, and typically you have people that are doing these pieces, but because there has to be such coordination so that your proposal doesn't look like the RFPs that he always sees from the government, that's why there needs to be this close coupling of these functional areas with each other. So, yeah, so keep that in mind.
I have a thing on that. That is the hardest thing about proposal writing, and we do quite a bit of that. And we have groups that will come to us that are doing over $1 billion in this. We'll say, God, do you have a pricing person? Do you have a technical writer? And so these are folks who are doing 27, 28, they're ongoing RFPs. They're doing them. And they can't even find the people that she's just discussing. I mean, it's a very complicated issue that everybody points, and in the end, you send in something that's pretty poorly done. And it's not that this is the big, I mean, everybody's having that problem. So it's a serious issue, and if you have that internally, someone who can understand that all those aspects, but no one really does. And so just be ready for when that hits, and whoever's in charge is going to have a hard time in the company finding each of those pieces to do this. And it will be 5 minutes before it's supposed to be submitted that you're still lacking little pieces because the 2 or 3 in your company aren't getting you the information you need.
And while we're on this topic, if this technical person changes something, like part of the solution, they just change to a different vendor, What impact does that have?
All
Impacts pricing, because you have to have new vendors